Welcome to Emily's garden, come on out today. Welcome to Emily's garden, just a snap away. In this place, life is celebrated. It's the place where dreams are cultivated. Welcome to Emily's garden, just a snap away.
Welcome to my garden. It's the place where dreams are cultivated. I have a great show planned for you today. Join me now at a very special meeting of the Little Thrummers. What's that, you ask? Well, sir, it's simply a well-organized group of happy hookers, rug hookers, that is. This meeting took place in a charming old monastery in Rhode Island. Great fun, I promise you. So sit back, relax, grab some handwork if you like, and watch this. This is Martha Maynard, who is the culprit that got me to go to this wonderful club. Thank you so much, Martha. Welcome. She also taught me how to spin wool. Martha is a master weaver, spinner, and now you are a
hooker. I'm a hooker, and proud of it.
So you started doing some hooking of rugs, and you met Gloria. And tell me, there's a little story here about all of this?
Yes, I'm inspired by her, and as a gift to me this summer, she gave me a warp that is absolutely beautiful.
You wove these?
Yes, and the warp
Unbelievable.
These beautiful, beautiful colors.
Oh.
Now this is the same warp with a different weft color, and I used the silver again, and then put the chenille aqua, and it gave it a whole different look.
Beautiful. Now I have to look at this underneath here. This is heavier.
Yes.
Love the colors, by the way.
Isn't it beautiful?
I have fallen into a pool of textiles that is just to die for. You made this?
Yes.
This is the end of the warp.
Yeah, right.
So the length of it is then cut.
Right. And the pattern is called a tutu twill. So you just follow your pattern on your loom.
This is woven, it's not knitted.
Right.
Woven, right.
Right.
And this is
knitted.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Just beautiful. And Martha, I can see that you're still going strong with all of yours.
Yes.
I have to ask you the ultimate question. How did you get started doing this?
My sister found the craft online.
Okay.
And she ordered a kit, and she loved it. And she's in South Carolina, I'm in Rhode Island. She said, would you like to go to Maine for a week and learn how to rug hook? We haven't done anything as sisters for years. Sure, why not? We'll take a vacation.
I heard you say we're going to learn how to rug hook. Is that a slip on words? Or is that the correct way of saying it? Is it rug hook or hook rugs?
They're hooked rugs, but you rug hook.
I never would have thought that. I'm ready for a demonstration. Now, I saw you cut with this machine.
There are different models and makes. Some are more elaborate than others. This is one of the simpler ones that I can carry with me. I can change the width of your strip. This is about a medium width strip, so it's easy for me to hook. And it gets a little bit of detail. It doesn't get a wide one color.
All right, I'm going to have you take me from cutting a strip through the main process. Do I have to hold anything for
No.
you? I think you're a pro, right?
It all kind of sits.
I love this.
So you take your piece of wool and you just put it through the cutter. Three pieces of wool.
That's fabulous. What is this form of hooking rugs called?
It's traditional rug hooking.
Traditional.
As opposed to latch hook.
That's the only one I'm familiar
I
with.
grew up latch hooking with the yarn that was about this wide, and you pulled it through and you came up and it made a shag rug. This is traditional rug hooking. So we take a strip. I have one here. And all you do is you hold it in your fingers. You go underneath. You find where your fingers were and you pull up the loop. And that's how you start. You go to a hole and you pull it up. And that's as simple as it is. It goes all the way through. Up. 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 You can go around. You can go straight. These are scallops, so it's curving. And you're done. Now, all you do is you take your next strip. You go into the hole you just finished. To finish the loop, you pull it up. And you go again. Loop. Loop.
Where do you get your material?
Anywhere. A lot of times you can use recycled wool from any thrift shop that you find.
Old clothing?
Old clothing. This wool I've gathered from different vendors, and you can dye wool. So we'll get natural wool and it'll be dyed. Some of this is dyed as opposed to being just something you'd find as is. And as you go around, you'll see some people that have some beautifully dyed, hand-dyed wool.
The canvas.
Linen.
It's linen.
This is linen. People use burlap. It doesn't last as long as linen. I like linen. Monk's cloth, which is a cotton, or rug warp, which is a cotton, but it's a heavier weight.
Does it matter what type of marker that you use?
Yes, because it could get wet. You want to use a permanent marker. It's a laundry marker, and it won't run. So if you have a white wool, the last thing you want to see is black marker coming through your rug.
This is just laid on your lap. What do you have under here?
I have part of my frame.
This is great. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on a little bit because there's a lot of things here to see.
There are some beautiful rugs here. Thank you.
Now I'm with the president of the Little Thrummers.
And if anybody is interested in becoming a Little Rhodey Thrummers member, they can Google the internet. To Ather, look for Region 1, Rhode Island chapter, they'd find us.
And your nonprofit. This is a club.
It's a club. And thrummers, did they tell you what a thrum is?
No.
Everything when you're hooking comes up, and you have a little piece of, and you cut it off, that's a thrum, that little piece. And there's other things besides rugs or runners that people do. I mean, we have my pins.
I love these. This is why I really was attracted to this lady.
I'll tell you what, you can have that one, because I have a lot of these at home. That's the thing I was trying to say, is rug hooking isn't just making rugs or mats. I mean, also we saw today making footstools, but we have pins. A lot of times people will make small hot plate mats and other things.
How would you make something like this?
I make a strip, I cut them out, and I shape them, then I pull them through. The center is one color or colors. And actually this is a piece of yarn, because I like adding embellishments. And as you can tell, I have, on this one here, I have some little beads, you know.
Beautiful.
And then these are all the petals. And then I add a little greenery in the back. I hook the pin in with thread, because then it's more sturdy and it doesn't fall apart.
Now, I know that you're working on something, and you told me that you're doing a whip stitch.
I'm whipping.
Okay.
Finishing, when you do a rug or a runner, you can do a lot of different ways to finish it off. I just turn it over, my material, doubling it. I do a little slip stitch across it, and then I take yarn, and usually wool, and then I just whip over the edges. So we do that, and that's how we'll finish off.
Oh, that's lovely. If you know any craftsperson, if you turn their work over, it will look almost as good as the front, because you know your stuff.
Yeah, I'm so glad you came today.
I'm really looking forward to the spring. It's been such a long winter. I'm going to call this zinnia. I will think of you every time I wear it.
I actually want to start some seeds in the house. Zinnias and marigolds I'll tend to put in the ground.
Yeah.
Squashes I put
Right
outside. Yeah,
Yeah,
squashes,
3 days.
cucumbers.
As long as the ground is warm. You're a gardener. Tell me what your name is. You're lovely.
Sydney Morgan.
Okay, Sydney, how'd you get started
I hate
doing
that name, Sid.
Love the name.
No, it isn't. It's a boy's name, and I keep getting mail from Mr., so anyway.
How did you get started doing this?
I lived in Maine, and we had a wonderful adult school. You could take anything. I also built a bookcase in the shop, and we had braiding. And I did a rug that's in my kitchen. It's 5 feet across. It's getting kind of tired and old, but it's so am I. You can't. It comes.
It does. What is your claim to fame, Esther?
I don't know.
What did you do?
Rug hooking and quilting.
And what's the name of this club?
Little Thrums.
And who started it?
Me.
That's your claim to fame. How long ago did you start this? How old is this club?
This club is 25 years.
Okay.
I've been hooking for 50.
Not
I'm
too
89.
shabby. Wow. Question I wouldn't have asked, but you don't look 89. When does the Little Thrummers meet?
Oh, 5 times a year. September, November, January, March, and June.
And you have a newsletter online, so it's open to the public?
Yes.
Oh, don't put this away. I want to see what you're doing.
Oh, I'm just doing it yo-yos.
Yo-yos, I think I've done these before.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. Cut out your circles.
Yep.
And then you're going to
gather
do
it
a
up.
slip stitch all the way around
Yeah.
and pull.
That's it.
Yep.
Very easy.
How has rug hooking changed in the last 25 years, or has it?
We did very fine hooking. I still do it. They are doing wide cut now, they call it. And because people are much more in a hurry.
Now, when you say wide cut, I saw a machine that I loved, and I want one. The cutter.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. You are also a quilter.
Yeah, I have from rug hooking to quilting.
That is a craft in itself. I like the crazy quilts. That's always been my favorite.
I know. I've done one in velvets and brocades.
The velvets, yes, and the brocades, and you can do some embroidery on top.
That's what I did.
Of
I
that.
put everybody's birthday.
They're lovely. I'll bet you remember this. My grandmother taught me how to sew on a treadle sewing machine, which I still
Right.
use. I do.
Do you still use
I
it?
still use it. She would have me, when I went to visit her, take all the old clothes,
Right.
zippers went somewhere, buttons went somewhere, all the material would be cut, but only in the largest pieces possible.
Right.
Nylons were dropped over her house. They were washed.
Right.
Nylons that had runs in them from the family. We would cut them and put them in a bag. We never threw anything away.
Nylon stockings. My aunt's, those are her red stockings. This is all nylons.
I'm going to just put that down.
Okay.
What we would do is we would take, imagine that this is a square.
Right.
I can't believe I'm telling you this.
Why not?
Because you are like the epitome of the
No, that's
expert,
all right.
and I'm
No,
showing
I'm
you
not.
how I made my first quilt.
You make me feel good.
And then you would put the other square on top,
Right.
if it were square. And all she would do was she would tell me to stitch here, one line, stitch across here, one line. And as you remember, the treadle sewing machines,
I know, I learned to sew on it.
if you didn't treadle correctly and you went backwards, what happens?
Yeah, the needle broke, the thread broke.
Or the thread broke.
Right.
It could, either or could happen, actually. But usually it would snap the thread, and my grandmother would stand over me, and she would say, again, thread it again. I'll never forget that. I can still remember the finger going down.
So what
and
did
I
you do
spin
with
wool
these?
now, so it helped me with that treadle action.
So how?
Okay, so if we had the square, all of those pieces of nylon would get tucked into each corner.
Oh my goodness.
And they were the warmest and the most fluffiest quilts ever.
So how did you sew the
And then we
squares?
just sewed,
Around.
just sewed around, and then of course when you have another one, you put the two together.
Oh, I never heard of that before.
Yep. And when I want to lose weight, I get on that treadle sewing machine.
No. So tell me about this program you have.
I have a television series. It's local cable access. It's in cities and towns actually across the country right now. It's in Texas and Illinois and Alabama. Rhode Island just picked me up, so it goes across the state.
You live here?
I live in Massachusetts. My background is gardening.
Oh, really?
35 years in horticulture, and then it just got to be very difficult to have year-round work. I started this series because I wanted to keep this in my life. I'm actually a studio producer now. My daughter films. It's called Emily's Garden, and it's a lifestyle series. We leave from my garden and I go somewhere because I think everything's connected to the
So
earth.
how come you came here today?
Because my friend Martha said, you have to come.
Oh, okay. All right.
And she was right. I'm very pleased to meet you.
Oh,
Thank
I'm
you.
glad you came.
Thank you so much. I came here not really knowing what to expect. And you always find kindred spirits no matter where you go. I find that Lois was a florist and she dyes her own wool. We have something to talk about.
My father was a grower in the greenhouses. He started in 1958, and we were raised in the floral industry. Lived above the flower shop with 6 greenhouses, and did all the holidays and the flowers, and so color comes like a second-hand nature to me.
How did you get started actually in hooking rugs?
I'm too cheap to buy.
Me too. I told you, we're kindred spirits.
I wanted
Frugal. The word is frugal.
No, cheap is better. I wanted
Economical.
I have a very primitive house, and I wanted rugs, and I was too cheap to spend the money on them. So that's how I got into doing it.
And you'd spanned out, obviously, to footstools and other items.
Footstools, we do many different patterns. I design my own patterns, obviously use my own wool.
I went to Ireland a couple of years ago. I was on a sheep farm.
Well, if you come into my house, when we first get the wool, it smells like wet sheep.
Yeah.
Because it's soaking in this basement. And my husband will walk in and he'll go, oh, wool shipment. I'm like, yeah, it's wool. And some wools will smell terrible.
I haven't gotten into hooking rugs yet. I have a friend, Martha, who's sitting over there very quietly.
She's hooking.
Taught me how to spin wool. I had a neighbor come by the first year I did it. You know how you put it on screens to dry? You put the wool after you've washed it on screens to dry outside, and I'll never forget this. My neighbor came walking by and said, you know, you can get that 3 skeins for $1 at whatever the department store was. Totally missed the idea. When you collect your dye stuffs, probably primarily flowers, mordants will change the color.
Right.
Maybe you could explain a little bit about that process for people that have never dyed.
I dye with 3 different types of dye. I keep very good records, and we get the wool fabric in. It has to be washed and dried and then soaked and then dyed on the stove and rinsed and dried. So there's a lengthy process to it, but it's mixing the colors and keeping those records that you can blend shading to it.
I always say I wish I had paid better attention to chemistry in school, because it's not about the color wheel at all. The mordants are copper. Help me out here. Alum. And the flowers. I know marigold flowers.
Marigolds, you can use beet juice, you can do onion skins, any natural greens outside. And it's funny because if you do like green leaves, for instance, if you make a mixture out of that, you're going to get a yellow dye. You're going to get a yellow fabric. You're not going to get green. If you do beets, you're not going to get a beet red fabric. You're going to get like a mauve or a pink. So everything will change. And the other thing is, I'm on a city water system.
I didn't think of that.
Snow or rain will change my colors, because the more chlorine they put into the water, then it'll affect my dyes.
Any type of chemical compound will
So
affect it.
I have to keep in mind that if it's a real heavy chlorinated day, I try not to dye on those days.
Now, how do you set your dyes? Because a lot of them are not color fast.
No, I use vinegar. I use white vinegar. A lot of people use citric acid. I prefer white vinegar.
How did you become a speaker for your club?
Well, we had a woman that was coming down from New Hampshire to do, this was last in January, to do a segment on stools, and she canceled it last minute. So I stepped up to the plate. This is Little Thrums, which is a great group of women, and they asked me if I could do it, and I said, sure, I'll do it for you. So I put together the pattern, and we built the base, and did a lot of research on it, and that was the last meeting in January.
When you do these lectures, they're fun. You obviously don't have trouble speaking in front of people, and we all know I don't have trouble speaking in front of people. But the prep work for something like this, sometimes it will take you up to a week. Not only the materials, I mean, this took much more than a week for you. I'm talking flowers.
Yeah.
To do something like this, to do something that's going to maybe take 10, 15 minutes for an actual lecture.
Right. It's a lot of homework, a lot of trial and error, a lot of research that goes into it.
Planning and prefab.
Yep. And it's just, that's the part you don't see.
It wasn't that hard to put together. It's this at this point you're doing everything by hand because you can't get it onto a sewing machine. It's too much. So what I did was laid it on top of the footstool. And you actually, when this is cut, you're going to take it and you're going to fold your seams together. So this will all be hooked on both sides. So you can see it's folded inside. The easiest thing I found was to take some big clips. And you have to kind of hold it together. I just straightened it out, took it off, and just kind of flipped it a little bit to the right side, and I put this clip that held it together in place. I lined up my hooking on the bottom so my lines met, and I hooked one at the top. Then what you would do is you just I started at the top, and you almost whip stitch it, not a very tight whip stitching, but a little bit, probably maybe 1/4 of an inch apart. And with heavy, I used cotton, button, and rug thread, a very heavy thread, and double it up, and then hand stitch it going down. Once you get it down to the bottom, now you have a finished corner. You have to hook in the ditch, which I don't know if you can see here, but there's 2 extra lines. So what you do is you fold this line that you've hooked to one side, and you hook on one. You have to work your hook in and pull it. Now this is a 9.5 cut. I did have to use an 8 and an 8.5, which killed me. And you almost have to kind of wiggle it in between your rows of hooking. So you're not going to be perfectly lined up. It's not going to happen. And you have to wiggle it in and fit it all together. So you can see there's like very little of this green showing, but there's more of a brown. And it was just so that you didn't see the backing. You almost have to do a corner at a time. If you don't, it's too hard to do it. The underside of it will look like this. The inside, where you can see how it's open. It's not sewed together. I've got this serged, but you can actually see the hooking coming down from it. So that's how the inside corner will look when you're finished doing this. Then you have to fit it again, go on to the next corner. If you don't do it that way, you're going to be ripping it out. The other thing I did, and I will advise anybody, on the bottom, if you think you need an extra row before you cut this and get it off here, hook it. Because last night when I got it together, I had to add another row. And you're all the way around, but the problem is when you get to the corner, you have to pull the wool through and then up into the next side. So you're kind of pulling it through to one side and then hooking it and starting it. So it was a little bit, it's awkward to do it, but you can do it. But you're hooking, you're sewing everything from the right side and you're hooking from the right side. Didn't take that long to do, but you know, just bear in mind when you look at this, you'll see they're not, they almost go in between the loops, the part that's hooked. So once you get all 4 done, then you're going to stop to put it on your frame. Okay, and that's going to take 2 people. Get it onto the right section. What I did was when I got it in, it's just like anything else. You put on a sleeve and a coat and a twist. Well, this twist. So what we're going to do is and just work it around so it fits. And it's just tugging and getting it in. If you feel once you get it you need a little more padding, you would stuff a little bit more padding in here. We actually did this last night, so I'm good with my padding. Then what you're going to do is you're going to turn it so it's upside down, and we're going to start to pull it, and we're going to staple it. You ready?
This is noisy, so.
This is going to be a little noisy, but you do 2 on each side just to get it to hold. You want to pull it as tight as you can get it. It's going to be covered. What I'm going to do is I might take and do a piping. So I would attach the piping on the bottom. So you would just see like a row of wool. You wouldn't be able to sew it, so you'd staple it. And then put the finished part on after that. Now that it's together and I can see which way I want to do it, it'll either be with shorter bun feet or
I like the first one.
the holes for the feet have to be put on first before you put the backing. You're going to almost like punch a hole in it to put the screw from the feet. So it's a fairly large screw. So then this will be attached into the, and they just like will screw in. That's it for that.
Okay, Lois, I have to ask this question because I have a friend that just kind of jokes about this all the time. You really do call yourself hookers.
We do call ourselves hookers. We are hookers.
Okay.
And normally, you know, people don't know what a hooker is, or they do. And it's just something that it's a fun thing. If you meet fellow hookers, you know it's just a little organization we like to compare ourselves to.
Okay.
So I do charge for my hooking. Some people don't.
All right. On that note, I'll see you back at Emily's Garden in just a minute. I had a great time today. We part until we meet again. See you next time here in Emily's Garden. Thank you.